Hello everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We're taking a look, of course, here at Bitcoin, seeing what's going on with this nice green candle here today, up 4% on the day. And we're going to kind of see why that is and if there's any potential for continuation to the upside or downside or generally what that might look like. So if you're new to the channel, just know, not a financial advisor. I truly love teaching people to trade. Thank you so much for joining. Obviously, if you want to become a better trader, I have a Crypto Cash Trading University as well as a trading community where we all learn and grow together. Icing on the cake, I send out signals for every single trade that I take, and we've taken some pretty decent profits here recently to the downside for XRP before it spiked. And of course, we just opened a trade here for Bitcoin as well. I'll explain more about that here in a moment. Last thing to recognize as well is BitGet Trading Exchange. Highly recommend using this as well. You get a pretty significant bonus if you use the link in the description below to register. Keep in mind you do have to transfer funds and of course trade with them. If you're not trading, then you're not going to receive any benefits, of course. But a lot of my members are using this because of the fact that it allows for you to have leverage as an option in the United States without KYC and or a VPN. So it's a really awesome situation there. So be sure to check that out in your own time. Take a look here though at Bitcoin, of course. This big dog, what's going on? Well, big picture, kind of just reiterating the fact that we are still bearish. You see this trend line here essentially from highest point, about 69,000, to the second highest point, 48,000, and of course, we wicked up and got rejected right in the 22,000 range, okay? So until we break back up above that trend line, we're not going to have much of a leg to stand on. So I'd expect for the price action to get, I wouldn't say funky, it's already been pretty funky, but I would say in general, it would be best to anticipate the price action going at the very best sideways until we break this descending trend. There's a chance and a likelihood the price action is going to continue lower. So please recognize that. It's absolutely a possibility. So we're going to take a look at and kind of see what that potential might look like, right? Why don't we go ahead and just touch on it first of all, to kind of give you an idea, because back here at about 14,000, that is a key level resistance previously for Bitcoin. That was basically its highest point in the cycle in 2019. And then, of course, the price just below that, right in the 12,500 range, is essentially the next highest, basically its highest point before it went parabolic. So the reason why those are relevant is the fact that those are areas that the price, if it does continue lower, could very well touch and retest. Okay, so I would say worst case scenario, 12,500 to 14,000. That's worst case. Better case scenario, the price action stays where it's at and continues higher. It'll likely continue to have to find its bottom. So we take a look at the volume profile. We are still tentatively down below that area as a resistance. So we can expect 19,800 to be a resistance level. Okay, so a good chance we'll see a retest of that here soon. But on the same accord, that's kind of what's going on. So we're somewhere in the range of, I would say 19,800 as a better case scenario. And a worst immediate case scenario would be a retest of 17.6. Okay, that's just generally what we're looking at here. We're slightly range bound for the moment, but it's still a little too early to tell. So for lack of better terms, what we want to look for is higher lows and potentially higher highs eventually. I think we have the higher lows in the smaller time frame. We'll look at that here as well, but generally speaking, it's looking fairly positive in the last 24 hours for Bitcoin versus obviously last week. The last week has been a mess ever since we had that meeting, of course, last week, or sorry, the minutes came out. That was just, it really didn't help us at all. And then, of course, yesterday was just crazy and nonsensical. It wicked up super large, like it was like a 10% wick from top to bottom at one point. It's just really insane. You probably already saw that, don't need to talk about it, but just generally speaking here at this point, Bitcoin's looking better today than it did yesterday. Obviously, we see that. All right, so taking a look at the RSI, we're under 50 on the RSI still. Again, we got to get back above that. I would say a closure above 19,800 would put us really close to 50 on the RSI. That would put us back up over that volume profile. So I would say that 20,000 as a nice round number would be a closure we're going to be looking for. Are we going to get that today? Possibly, possibly not. It doesn't seem super likely. It's not like it's like just going to go on a tear because the price action came down. But that fear, uncertainty, and doubt of the inflation from yesterday is kind of factoring in, right? And if we take a look at traditional markets too, you can see that Bitcoin is doing fairly well if you compare it to NASDAQ and or S&P 500. Okay, so again, mostly good stuff in that sense. If Bitcoin's responding positively when the traditional markets are doing negative, that tells us that we're probably at the likely bottom for now. Again, I want to emphasize that for now. It's definitely not a certain bottom, but it does help us understand that with this bounce, after some of that fear, uncertainty, and doubt yesterday, and the traditional market's doing terrible, Bitcoin is looking fairly strong in that regard, and we should expect a retest of the 19,800 at the very least. That's my speculation. Yesterday it wicked up, of course, and got rejected instantly. That was like a 1 minute candle. That's not really all that reliable. The wick here today is what we're hoping for, to see it wick up to that level. Okay, that being said, we also want to take a look here at the MACD. It is potentially going to converge to the upside here in the next couple of days, and that's potentially a positive. The key takeaway here, though, is that this oscillator is starting to dissipate, right? It's waning, and it's essentially coming back. When it's contracting like that, it tells us the momentum is lost, and essentially the bears don't have much of a leg to stand on. I mean, you think about it, the bears, minus that one terrible day, have taken 20% profit in the last 8 to 9 trading days. Okay, so again, just something to recognize there. That has to come to an end. In fact, why don't we take a look at TD sequential on the daily, and what do you know? Yesterday we hit a 9, and today we're green. Okay. Now again, it doesn't guarantee we're going to see green in the future. It just tells us that the overextension to the downside shouldn't continue further. Because Bitcoin in its history, especially on the daily, it's done very well for itself anytime we have a 9 on TD sequential after a major sell-off. So again, I wouldn't expect rainbows and sunshine. I would just expect the price action to come up and get rejected and to potentially continue to retest that trend line and effectively break it. That's essentially what we're looking for. So again, mostly positive here on the daily in that sense. I love to see an overextension to the downside. It just screams long, and I think that in this sense here, you should probably be pretty safe to allow for, that the price is more likely to go up than it is to go down right now. Okay, because again, we're in this overtime type of situation, and once again, Bitcoin, it's not a guarantee, but for the most part, you see a 9, it's going to turn itself around. Okay. So it may not last very long. We might just get one more pump tomorrow, or perhaps a little bit going into the weekend, and then maybe we might even see a red weekend. It's honestly hard to say. It's all speculation at this point, but this is a positive thing that I like to take away. So there's mostly positive on the daily, believe it or not, as well as the fact that we are still below the moving averages. Okay, so just keep that in mind until we get back up over the 20 initially, preferably the 50, because you can see the 50 is working its way in to try to go ahead and align itself with that moving average, or correction, not the moving average. The 50 is a moving average. It's going to align itself with the descending trend, right? Again, mostly positive stuff. All right, so take a look at the 4 hour. Here's kind of where we're at. We've got basically a double bottom. You can see the price action retesting that level. Wicks down to 18,000, I wouldn't say exact, but pretty close, 18.1, and then previously 18.2. And in that sense, that kind of gives us the indication that the price action is unwilling to go that much lower, especially in the face of all this crazy stuff as far as inflation and 0.75% basis points, the whole 9 yards. All that stuff's going to factor in here. But the fact that it pushed it down that far and it wouldn't go past that same level here recently, and we got a 4 hour closure at the same exact point at 18,000, just say round number 500, 18.5, that's giving us an indication that the likelihood of the price action being right at that area is pretty high. In other words, we shouldn't experience price coming lower based on that sentiment. It very well could happen, just it shouldn't happen. I guess that's the bottom line. And we could also see here too, this descending type of trend. The fact of the matter is it's broken to the upside now. Okay, so again, generally speaking, looking pretty decent here in that sense. So what we also want to look at is a couple of other things. We're testing 50 on the RSI on the 4 hour. That's positive. We can break above that and be really, really good. Obviously, we got the 50-day SMA working as a potential resistance level. It's wicked up there previously, but if you retest that level a few times, it could absolutely break through there. Because again, the 50-day SMA on both the 4 hour and the 1 day are extremely important indicators. I would like to be up over the 200, but that's a different story. That puts us at 20,000 or greater. We'll bridge that gap when we get there. For right now, the 4 hour time frame is kind of giving us mostly good vibes, but also conflicting vibes. In other words, this transitionary time frame doesn't really tell us that we're going to see a massive increase in the near future. Something could happen. The end of the trading day is always interesting, so we could want to pay attention to that. But hypothetically, we're 4 hour candlesticks, basically 16 hours into a 36-hour potential continuation of the upside. Right now, it's not to say that we're not going to see a pullback. I am expecting 18,800 to be retested again, and if so, then that is the case, right? That's exactly why I had 2 entries in our target here recently. We got a recent entry as well as 18,800 to get that average fill lower if the price comes down and bounces. It's a likelihood it will happen, so you want to be prepared for that. But if not, all well and good, continues up, we got some skin in the game. That's the important thing here. And again, to all those using leverage, please, please, please use small position sizes and small amounts just in general. Because again, with larger leverage, you increase your risk. and you might win a few times and be really content with it, but there's going to be just this one bad trade that you take where you decide to go half of your total position size in, and you're just going to get wrecked, and it's just going to ruin your day. There's nothing better than going into something and knowing that you didn't lose as much as you should have had you got greedy, right? Again, those are just little things I try to teach in my university, so be sure to check that out in your own time. Again, cryptocash.tech is a website where you can register to become a better trader. So here's the 1 hour. Here's that funkiness I was talking about. So we got this immediate spike up, got an instant rejection at 19,800. Price comes all the way down to wick to 18,100. So that is a pretty significant little 4 hour time frame. Like, you look at that, that is almost a 10% correction, but basically 9% in just under 5 hours. So it's pretty significant. Obviously, you know that if you saw the price action, but that is essentially what happened yesterday. It was pretty. I wouldn't say bizarre. It's par for the course. We expected it, and if you're going to trade in that environment, just be very careful. That's all I ask. But for right now, at this point, what I want to identify is a couple of things. First of all, Ichimoku Cloud. Take a quick look. We're back up above, but it's, again, very tentative because we have this sharp decrease in this little average here, this average cloud that's kind of not giving us much information. And in truth, we are fairly range bound too, right? When you're range bound, the cloud will not give you perfect signals. Okay, so please understand that right now, there's not a lot of reliability in this indicator. The one thing that is helpful is that the lagging span is free and clear of price action for the moment. So that does allow for the price action to potentially continue higher because of that. Moving averages are looking good. I mean, generally speaking, there's mostly positive here, but I still don't like this gap in the cloud. And you can see that because it dropped so low that it didn't have any real true data to average itself out on the cloud. Anyways, that is, I would say, not that fantastic. What is good here, and was kind of something to pay attention to here, is, of course, we came up to a 9, consolidated, came down to retrace, bounced off 18.8, the key level support. Now we're up to a 5. So we hypothetically have 4 more hours of continuation of sideways and or upward. I'm hoping it continues up, but I would not be surprised if we see a retest of 18,800. That's absolutely a possibility. So prepare yourself for that. But if it doesn't happen again, price action is increasing, and the likelihood of it going higher from here is greater. But again, after hitting this 9 and this nice period of consolidation up and down, that kind of removes that overextension and allows for us to kind of hit the reset button. And that's a positive thing. Okay, so all in all, mostly good stuff here in that sense. The last thing we might want to take a quick look at, and this isn't really going to tell us much, is standard deviation within the volume weighted average price. And we can see we just got overextended here recently. So a pullback to the VWAP line at about 18,960 would be a possibility. So just be ready for that, as well as the fact that the Bollinger Bands are also giving us an indication that we could see a bounce here soon with the actual middle average there. So again, some I would say more positive than negative, but it's not like it's a phenomenal 1 hour time frame or 15-minute kind of giving us a lot of indications. What I like the most is the daily being overextended to the downside, and the fact that we're bouncing off that overextension, and the fact that Bitcoin's doing very well for itself compared to a traditional market. All right, so those are things I think that are positive. Are we going to see a pullback? Sure, that's probably a likelihood. But are we going to see probably another couple of green days, perhaps even throughout the weekend? That's a possibility. I think so. So again, mostly good stuff in that regard. I would say if I were to just average assess this out, I would say we got a 60% probability of an increase from here. Again, that's not a very good likelihood. I don't love those odds. I prefer to have a much higher odds. But on the same accord, it's doing well for itself, all things considered, and I think we need to recognize that. So all in all, that's where we're at. Hopefully you learned something here today. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you want to become a better trader, cryptocash.tech is a site, and obviously jump on that BitGet benefit. It's only available until November, and all you got to do is transfer funds and trade with them to benefit from that. It's a really awesome situation. I got a pretty big deposit just because of that. It was really nice. All right, that being said, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for your time. See you next one.